Well, here we are, show 8, the universal womb, and we're going to be discussing two passages, Creation 1:10 and Creation 1:11. Dan, give us a quick look ahead at what we're doing in this program.
God is going to speak his very first words, creating the everlasting law in harmonious rhythm and establishing the eternal spheres within the universal womb.
Wow, so we're going to expand on this concept of the universal womb.
Yes, we are.
Excellent.
Quite a bit.
Excellent. With that, let me go ahead and read Creation 1:10 and 1:11. The activating word was spoken. Its echoes vibrate still. And there was a stirring movement which caused instability. A command was given, and this became the everlasting law. Henceforth, activity was controlled in harmonious rhythm, and the initial inertia was overcome. The law divided the materializing chaos from God, and then established the boundaries of the eternal spheres. Time no longer slept on the bosom of God, for now there was change, where before all had been unchanging, and change is time. Now within the universal womb was heat, substance, and life, and encompassing it was the Word, which is the law. You know, Dan, in the beginning, the first verse of Creation 1:11, time no longer slept on the bosom of God, for now there was change where before all had been unchanging, and change is time. We're back to time, but this is starting to take a more cosmic overtone as opposed to a very mortal human view. Is that safe to say?
I would say it is, yes.
Excellent. Well, then let's get into this a lot deeper, beginning with Creation 1:10:1. The activating word was spoken. Its echoes vibrate still. And there was a stirring movement which caused instability.
Humans create vibrations with spoken words, just as God did. However, the language spoken here was one that created universes, a vibratory pattern to create matter. That's an important concept. Vibrations are still resounding throughout the universal womb, holding the universe in place. This stirring movement, initiated by a ripple from the mind of God, created universes, which I believe whenever he spoke of the chaos within the womb, it created instability within the womb. Now in science, when an unstable or instability is created, it will create a reaction that will continue until it is once again balanced. So by creating an instability, he's now going to create something until it's balanced. It's going to be ever creating until it's once again balanced.
So the question then, I mean, I love this verse because we're coming back to my ripple word that I love. All right. But what we have is instability as a concept. Now, is instability a byproduct, a circumstance created by creation, or is instability actually necessary to creation, something that forces a change in the existing order?
Well, the word chaos somewhat implies instability.
Okay.
And chaos is the fabric from which matter is created when it is meshed with a vibratory sequence. So yes, instability is necessary. I believe it's created specifically for the purpose of being able to create action and reaction. In this case, to form universes.
So it's actually not a byproduct of creation, but an integral part of it.
Very much so.
Wow. Well, with that, let's move ahead to creation 110.2. A command was given, and this became the everlasting law. Henceforth, activity was controlled in harmonious rhythm, and the initial inertia was overcome.
The everlasting law is what we know as metaphysical or physical laws. There were many more laws to be enacted, but this is all that was needed for the universe creation. It was just the part that they're speaking of in this verse is what was needed to create the universe.
Mm-hmm.
In quantum physics, we observe that matter exists at specific intervals of frequency and highly resists anything in between. It's very interesting. So if we have a universe existing at this frequency of matter, we would have another one below it at some interval, and we would find another one above it at that very same interval, and perhaps another one below that at the same interval. And they are harmonic intervals, which means they are divisible. The higher ones are divisible by the lower. I think that really speaks well here that with this verse, it says with the words in this verse, activity was controlled in harmonious rhythm. To me, that's really important. That's really an understanding of that harmonious interval of frequency at which matter needed to exist. It's not in dissonance. When it becomes in dissonance, and whenever they touch, is whenever Big Bang happens again. We know that when matter and antimatter collide, that they explode and release energy. They literally dissolve because the frequency of this matter disrupts the frequency of this matter, and they can no longer remain as matter and must return back to the energy from which they were made. So another big explosion occurs. We see this at the center of quasars, at the center of black holes, and then the Big Bang. We know that it takes a lot of energy to create the vibrational waves that quickened energy into matter, and I believe that this is what they're referring to as the initial inertia that was overcome.
But stop and think about what you've just analyzed with this particular verse, how our modern understanding of science really unlocks it. But what you're reading here, what we're talking about with creation 110, verse 2, is something that's 3,600 years old. And there's that drumbeat question that's in my mind. Where did the ancients get this knowledge? Where did they find this wisdom? That seems so elusive for me. I guess we just have to keep working through it. Maybe somewhere, buried in some arcane verse in the Kolbrin, we could get the answer.
Perhaps we'll find it.
Yep. But in the meantime, let's move on to creation 110.3. The law divided the materializing chaos from God, and then established the boundaries of the eternal spheres.
The materializing chaos is what we know as matter. The law acting upon the chaos created a type of energy that does not mingle with the energy body of God and caused matter to exist independently of God. Yet it was made in the universal womb from God and held together by the song of God, that harmonious rhythm heard throughout the cosmos. The size of spheres, of course, were determined by the laws of physics and created in measureless bounty. They're everywhere. You know, we've got kabillions of them out there in the universal womb, and many different superverses and many different dimensions. But I believe what's really beautiful here is how it says the law divided the materializing chaos from God.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, well, I think we're going to see something. I'm not sure how I would feel if something I just created got separated from me, but I'm giving it autonomy. So maybe that goes back to your freedom of will. It's necessary to set it free.
Maybe this is the age-old struggle of parenting.
Ooh, okay. Good analogy.
So, well, great. And again, the persistent question in my mind, another drumbeat, if you will, is all these universes in the multiverse, do they each have their own unique physical laws? Or do some of them share common sets of physical laws? Or do they all follow the same set of physical laws? That is the question that sticks with me.
I could give an answer, but I'm not there and I haven't visited others, so it would only be theoretical. So,
well, give me a theoretical.
It is in my belief at this point in my evolution and my growth that the physical laws and the metaphysical laws within one multiverse are the same, but with many different types of matter that cannot intermingle. But the laws in a different multiverse can be quite different than the laws in perhaps our multiverse, that is physical laws. They may share many of the same, but there are also opportunity for many different types of actions and reactions to occur that we do not observe in this multiverse.
That's right. That's right. That's one of those questions you're not going to get the answer until you're on the other side.
That's right. Until we've been there, we really don't know because we just weren't there, you know?
Well, let's just hope they leave the lights on for us.
I hope they will. I believe they're going to.
All right. Let's move on to Creation 1:11:1. Time no longer slept on the bosom of God, for now there was change, where before all had been unchanging, and change is time.
Change, in my opinion, was the trigger that marked the beginning of time. We saw that a change in the nature of God, in the way he existed, he divided part of the energy of himself into an intelligent side and into a chaos side, and he changed something about himself to create the universal womb. And whenever this Big Bang, as we call it, occurred, we now have perpetual change in eternity, eternal change. And in my opinion, that has marked the beginning of time. Whereas before we saw the frustration of God, the loneliness of God, the things that were not changing. And it's still said that he is unchanging. He never changes, even though our universe does. So perhaps change is the trigger that marked the beginning of time. The eternal clock establishes the measurement of change, and we can use science to measure that change. And where there is change, time exists. So where there is no change, time is useless. There's nothing to measure.
I like that. That makes sense. That gets us out of the whole human mortality aspect, and we're taking a very pure scientific look at time. Excellent analysis. Excellent analysis. Now let's move on to Creation 1:11:2. Now within the universal womb was heat, substance, and life, and encompassing it was the Word, which is the law.
Here is our first mention of heat within the universal womb. Now, this is important scientific notation because the absence of all heat is measured at 0 degrees Kelvin. And at this temperature, all vibration stops. That is the ripple or the song, the harmonious rhythm. It stops and matter ceases to exist. That is the chaos no longer forms matter. It just stops. It reverts back to the form of chaos without the harmonious rhythm to keep it in its formation as matter. From this, we can create science that says where there's heat, there is matter. And conversely, where there is matter, there is heat. Substance and now life is introduced into the picture. So the great stage of life's journey is set for us. The Word of God is equated here to the law of God, which is the physical and metaphysical rules of harmonious existence of matter that we previously established. I think that's good that we carry that definition forward with us as we try to interpret later works of wisdom writings.
Well, I can say one thing that, wow, Creation 1:11:2, where it says, now within the universal womb was heat. Did that ever connect with me? Because that goes right back to my very first psychic experience, which was when I was a young man in college. I was taking a photography class, and we were working on filters. And there are all different kinds of filters you can use, particularly with black and white film, in various different shades that are going to change the nature of the film that is going through the lens and literally cooking the film that's in your camera when you expose it. And in my class, the instructor going through a departmental guideline, and frankly, the teacher didn't really understand it as well because it was crazy. It's like, use this filter, use that filter. You want to have more mid-tones. You want to have more of this. You want to have less of that, whatever it was. But the rules were arcane. And trying to really get your hands around it was very difficult. And, he told us we were going to have to take a test. That was troubling for everyone because we're going to be tested on something even our instructor was having a difficult time grappling with. And I went home with that thought in my mind, and in my house where I was living at the time, this is in Phoenix, and you tend to have solid shades and not the level or blinds because you really are trying to reflect and block out the light. And the living room was as dark as it could be midday, but there was this pinhole in the shade, and a beam of light was shining down from the pinhole and striking the floor, and I could see the different colors in the beam of light. And I was laying there resting because I was a little tired from the day, and just wondering in my mind, what if I could fly into that beam of light coming through the blind and landing on the center of the floor in the living room? And then I started dozing off a little bit, and then next thing I knew, I was flying in the beam of light. And what I was doing was pitching up and down like an airplane, because that would take me through the different colors in the spectrum. It was like flying through a huge dessert parfait. And what I noticed was that as I went from one color to another, I could feel a subtle difference in temperature. And this is not measured in Fahrenheit or Celsius, but this you have to do in Kelvin. And I was feeling that Kelvin difference. And then an epiphany came to me as I'm sitting there and flying through the light, that this explained how to use filters for black and white photography. that it had nothing to do with all of these theoretical notions and ideas and exceptions and whatever that they were trying to cook up to explain their process. It boiled it down to a very simple essence, that you were cooking film. That was it. And when you're cooking on a stove, you know, you simmer sometimes, other times you turn it up, you have different heat, different things, different foods you're cooking. And I suddenly saw it all. Just had this wonderful epiphany of how it all worked. And I came out of that astral projection, sat up, and realized I understood perfectly what to do. And I knew a local camera store was having a big sale. And I went there and I literally bought like a dozen different camera filters. And I knew exactly what each filter would do with any type of film I wanted to use, whether it was color or black and white or whatever it was. And a few days later was the exam in college, and I took the test. I was the only one to get an A.
Wow.
And the
You
teacher,
understood.
huh?
You understood.
I understood.
Not just knew, but you understood.
And the teacher was curious as why I got all the answers correct. And then I explained to him what happened. And he was, you know, he was just sitting there kind of stumped. And then he just said, thank you. And it was cool. So heat in this, here is our first mention of heat. This was really powerful for me. And with that, we go into our God question for this program. For those of you who are just now seeing this show for the first time in this 10-part series, please watch the first show in the series. It's going to explain how and why we use the readings, and it is important for you to understand this is for reference only. Dan, do you have the God question for this show, The Universal Womb?
I do. God, at what point did you create the first spirits from yourself?
When I saw that question, I'm going, whoa, Dan dropped another heavy on me. So, folks, the reading for this question will appear in our next show. But now I can give you the reading from show 7, our previous show.
God, how must we use the creative powers you've placed within us, and to what end?
Use the attributes of your form and the spirituality of your soul to gain a unique perception of the life expressions and forms of matter that comprise creation. Use this to better yourself, your species, and the greater abundance of sentient life forms you will encounter within the existence of creation. Of all the readings I've done so far, I think this one, to me, is the most eloquent, and it touches me in a very personal way. That, you know, the attributes of your form and the spirituality of your soul. Wow, that really touches me. What about that reading caught your eye?
Well, there's a couple of things here. I really noticed that he says, use the attributes of your form and the spirituality of your soul. So there's an experience being incarnated, and then the spirituality of our soul. So there's two universes we're experiencing here to gain a unique perception of the life expressions and forms of matter that comprise creation, which includes our fellow sentient beings. And then with this, we're going to better ourselves and our species. So we're going to serve our mankind as we grow. So focus, we're going to evolve, we're going to grow, and part of that growth is that we're going to serve mankind toward their growth and for their evolution. And all of the other sentient life forms that we'll find in creation, which I can't wait to meet.
Although I tend to think that all of these other life forms are kind of like humanity. You know, we have our loving aunts, stern uncles, and a crazy cousin who likes to chop people up with an axe in the woodpile. It makes you wonder if, you know, that is going to be what we find when we start exploring out there, that we come across other species. Are they going to share this spirituality? Or are they going to be like the ancient Romans, conquest? There's
Maybe some of all of it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think you're right with that. And which is quite appropriate, because in show 9, Unraveling the Secrets, I think we're going to start getting into that with Creation 1, 2. So give us a quick look ahead.
The biggest things in the universe are made from the smallest things, and the eternal things are made from that which appears for a moment. But when these things came into being, God became obscured from them all.
We're back to obscured. Okay. Well, look forward to seeing you in show 9.
I'll see you there.
See you there.